Thank you for joining us as we continue reading through the beautiful Eucharist. We're on chapter 1, written by Jackie Francois Angel. She said in chapter 1, her title, Mass was boring. Mass was boring. Until this happened. What is it that happened to Francois? She was going to Mass without it enriching her life. She wasn't understanding what was taking place. When she went on retreat, there was a different experience of the Eucharist because of the people that were there and her fellowship with those people and her participation in that Eucharist. For her, that retreat was life-changing. It gave her a hunger. She wanted to return to the Eucharist and experience it in that deeper way. Sadly, I think many people come to Eucharist without an interest in really giving themselves to the sacrament of Jesus Christ and his love and mercy. They come to fulfill an obligation, put in the time, meet with one another for a very brief passing, because they're there and then they're gone. How much Eucharist are we bringing home with us? How much Eucharist are we putting into our lives? When you are in a boring relationship, you tend not to give time to it. That is why we are in trouble as a church in our day. If the Eucharist is boring, people are not going to give time to it. They give their time to things they find more interesting. What can you do to make your Eucharist more interesting? She suggests we'll spend time there with the Eucharist. It's more than the Mass. It's the living presence of Jesus Christ at our churches. Do we ever take time for a visit to the Blessed Sacrament? Even in driving by a church, do we recognize there is the house of God, open, inviting me to an encounter? It's when we enter the church, perhaps outside the time of Mass, and especially as a family, for prayer. If we can come to the Eucharist for adoration, it's a different experience, and then the Mass will become to mean more in our lives. The Eucharist, the Mass was boring until this happened. I'd like to challenge you to be at the church at times outside of Mass. There because Jesus is there for adoration. There for a sense that we want to be with someone who loves us very much and is with us all the time. To stop by and make a visit. It said that the church is calling us not to have the Eucharist in a tabernacle, but to have the Eucharist in our lives, so that we are sent to be that body of Christ, that Eucharist, in our loving and serving of the needs of others. May we be enriched by our encounter with Christ and bring Christ to others in our lives.